of me and overflow to someone else so they become a part of that experience of change. This isn't distracting at all, is it? You're getting everything I'm saying, aren't you? I think that, yeah, that was a good one. So part of what, I'm trying not to shoot for eyes. Right, the folks in the really up front, they're very, 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 very frightened. Okay. So the first kind of note, in the top of your notes is just that a revolution, what it's about. The job of a revolution is to create change and then to enlist others in change. And that's exactly what we want to do in this series. We want to create change and we want to enlist others in change. So part of the big picture today really is kind of grasping the fact that that's exactly what Jesus came to do. He came to make change, and he came to enlist others in that change. And then as he departed, literally that was kind of the command. The parting words that Jesus basically gave his disciples were, I've changed you, now I want you to change the world. And so we've got to decide, do we want to be a part of a movement that can change the world, or do we just want to kind of sit on our laurels and let somebody else worry about changing the world? So Jesus wants us to recognize he did not come to start a religion. He came to start a revolution. A revolution of the heart and a revolution of the spirit, a revolution that literally changes the way we see life, the way we interact with life. And it's so easy for let the world kind of affect us in such a way that we don't believe we've got any potency to change anything. And so we kind of sit back and let somebody else be an instigator when God wants us to be his revolutionaries. So today really is about kind of it's kind of a rally cry to say, let's talk about this whole idea of revolution, which means change. And a revolutionary is someone who's involved in or causes complete or dramatic change. A revolutionary is someone who's involved in or they cause complete or dramatic change. And Jesus was the ultimate revolutionary. That's who he was. He was the ultimate revolutionary. And if I can kind of sum up, in fact, we're going to look at a lot of the passages in the Gospel of John today. And if you read the Gospel of John, it's true of all the Gospels, all of them are there to kind of tell the story of this revolutionary named Jesus. And if you look at the Gospel of John, there's several things that are extremely kind of shocking and revolutionary about what John reveals. And one of those is that John has kind of this salient quality to him that none of the other Gospels have. None of the other Gospels have this little component I'm going to mention now. In the Gospel of John, 7 times, there are 7 statements of Jesus about him saying, and the kind of the phrase is an I am phrase. It's an I am the light of the world. I am the gate. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. I am the good shepherd. I am. All these statements stacked upon one another are these amazing radical declarations that he was God. In every one of the I am statements, the listeners would have heard that as a declaration of this man proclaiming to be God. And that's kind of John's big point. His whole gospel is that we get that Jesus was not here to reinforce Judaism. He was not here to start a religion. He was here to start a revolution. He was God made flesh. So I think that's potent for all of us to kind of be confronted with that. And so today we're going to look at several of those I am statements. Most of those we're going to look at in some form today. Because I think you and I have got to ask ourselves, are we allowing what Jesus said to penetrate our lives? And if we're not, then we're not really involved in the revolution. But if we allow him, what he said, who he was, and who he wants to be in you and I, and that's the radical thing that he wants to do, is not just be a person of the past, but a person literally in your hearts and lives, in the present, changing who you are. When we accept that and embrace that, we begin to change also from the inside out, because we recognize that's where he now wants to reside. He wants to reside inside of us. Change is more. If I could sum up a revolution in a single word, it would be the word change, right? That's what the word means, revolution, to revolve, to turn and go a different direction. And the Bible just talks about that over and over and over and over again. It's one of the dominant messages of the Scripture we'll look at today and next week. Next week's the intro to the intro. This is just the intro to the intro. So you got to come next week because it's going to be a lot of fun. On the intro to the intro, this is the intro to the intro to the intro, okay? So don't get those confused. This week we're talking about change, and next week we're going to talk about change. We're going to do some fun things next week, which I want to encourage you to invite a friend to. In fact, one of the things we believe about revolutionaries is that when you're a revolutionary, back to point one, right, is someone who's experiencing change and enlists others in change. And so I'm going to give you a chance to kind of just step up and say, I think I could do that this week. You could experience change and enlist someone else in change. And we believe that's what revolutionaries do. And we believe it's about who they become. They become someone who influences change. One of the terms the Bible uses for that is the idea in term of being a missionary. And if you know our I am statements, right? We have I am loving, and I am loved, and I am a disciple, I am a mentor, I'm a missionary. So if you've been around for a while, you're familiar with some of those terms. And all those terms that we have on the wall, right, those plaques, all that is all that's all about what we're talking about now. It's that God changes who I am. And then who I am as someone who's been changed becomes an influencer of change. You see, he not only wants you to be changed, he wants you to be an instrument of change. And so part of my job is to encourage you in that, equip you for that. So we've been kind of thinking as a staff, as a team, as a leadership, and so we're going to do a couple things this year to help you begin to recognize that you are an influencer and you can influence people. And so that means that God wants to use you to make you a missionary, a revolutionary. Those could be interchangeable. So a couple things we're going to do about that. We're going to do invite a friend weekend every month. We're going to do an invite a friend a weekend a month. Now, you don't have to be limited to that. You can invite a friend anytime you want to. But we're going to kind of put some dates out there that, hey, this is the date to invite a friend. Or it could be a family member that's not that friendly, but they need Jesus. Or, whoever, right? You can invite someone to church. And so next week is going to be our invite someone. And it's kind of the kickoff intro week of the series. We're going to have a life-size cannon in the foyer, revolutionary cannon. We're going to have people dressed in revolutionary garb, wearing, men wearing wigs. Oh my gosh, why was that ever cool? I don't know. But so we're going to have some people in revolutionary costumes, and because throughout the series, I'm going to be comparing the American Revolution, which we should all kind of appreciate, right? This is your chance to say, yeah, like, do you love America? Aren't you glad you live in America? Don't you want to be a patriot? Yeah. And so we'll be comparing the American Revolution, which is just stunning. I mean, I've spent, months researching that, and a lot of that went into the book. And it's incredible, the stuff that happened during the American Revolution. And what is really mind-blowing to me is that every successful revolution, and the American Revolution may be in history one of the most successful revolutions of all time. In every successful revolution, there are some things that are absolutely fundamental that are true of any successful revolution. And if the revolution was not very successful, these things were very weak. But we're going to see how those very same things were true in Jesus' revolution. And in the Jesus Revolution, and how they not only were true, but they need to remain true in our lives today. And that's kind of the gist of the whole study. So as we involve ourselves in that, engage in that, enlist ourselves in that, join that, then we're going to see that change becoming more powerful in ourselves. When those become weak principles, we become weak revolutionaries. When they become strong principles, we become strong revolutionaries. And certainly, Jesus wants you to be a strong agent of change. Don't you believe that? C.S. Lewis said something interesting. He said, we all want progress. And if you're on the wrong road, ever been there? Turn and walk back to the right road. And in that case, whoever turns around the soonest is the most progressive. Okay, so this is your chance to be very progressive. You can be progressive because you can make a decision to turn and go back to maybe the faith you knew as a child, or the faith you had when you first met Jesus, or the faith that you had when you were passionate about God, and somehow the busyness of life has just kind of muted that and dulled that. Well, it's time to stir that. In this series, we want to do that. I want to stir your faith. So you start saying, I want to go back to that place where I know that God loves me so much that it changes everything I see and everything I experience. If you've not had that yet, then I want to invite you into experiencing that kind of relationship with God. George Bernard Shaw, the great playwright, said progress, and we all want that, right? C.S. Lewis had it right. We all want progress. Progress is impossible without change. And those who cannot change their minds can't change a thing. And so I don't know what sort of Christianity you've bought into that you think is so lukewarm, is so average that it has no effect on your life or anybody else's, but you've got to change your mind, because that's not the kind of Christianity I believe in. That's not the kind of Jesus I believe in. That's not the kind of Jesus that's been revealed in Scripture. That's not the kind of Jesus that I see every day moving in people's lives, changing how they think, changing how they react, changing how they love. Jesus wants to create a revolution in your heart and mind. But we've got to change our mind about some of the things we believe. Today's about that. Next week's about that. This week's about that. Maybe you got to change your mind that you couldn't influence somebody else to come to faith. You couldn't influence somebody else to join a spiritual revolution. Well, yes, you could. But you can't if you don't change your mind about that. Gandhi said it so well when he said, we must become the change that we seek in the world. We must become the change we seek. If I want something to be different, I got to be different, or it's not going to be any different. And so I want to stimulate us in the thought and conversation in every small group that we initiate or you plug into. And this season is a season to say, I want to be a part of that. So next week's going to be kind of a major connection event, but you can do that today. After service, you can get a shirt. You can pick up the book, join a small group. You can let us know that you would like to lead a group, because some of you are leaders that are just kind of sitting dormantly, not leading. And I want to say, why aren't you leading? You're a leader. Why aren't you leading? And why wouldn't you want to lead the Jesus revolution? And so you don't have to be an expert to do that. You don't have to know everything about the American Revolution or the Jesus Revolution. You can just kind of follow along with what I've kind of laid out. It's content. It's just content that allows you to kind of step into the flow of what truth has illustrated over and over for decades and years and centuries. And you can fall into that flow and start saying, this is content that I can really get on board with, and I can help facilitate a discussion that leads to transformation. God wants that kind of transformation in you and I. He does. He wants that for us. So I'm going to see if there's anything else I want to say at this point. I got more of these too, by the way. So, part of that is, I'm not talking about change for change's sake, right? Just, some people just want to change all the time. They change what they wear, they change who they date, they change what they drive, they change their mind about all kinds of things. They're passionate about this one day, passionate about this the next day, and they're just changing all. I'm not talking about change for just change. That can be frustrating. It can be, demotivating, and it can be exhausting to have someone who's constantly changing. Because if you're going to have change, you need two things. You need the right change, and you need lasting change. I mean, really, for change to be revolutionary, you need the right change, and you need lasting change. Certainly the new year, right, is a season of change. We do New Year's resolutions. Ruben did a great job. Great job, Ruben. Didn't Ruben do a good job last week? Yeah. And Tony the week before that, awesome. Did a great job just talking about, we make resolutions, and most of them break them, in a month or a few months. It's all out the window and didn't materialize in anything. That's not the kind of change we're talking about. That's not the kind of change I want. It's not the kind of change you want. A lot of us are going to the gym, and you're getting in shape this year. That's what you're going to do. That's awesome. That's good. I think that's a good change. Is that the right change? Well, it's a good change. It's a good change. Look what it says in 1 Timothy 4, 7 and 8. It says, have nothing to do with godless myths or old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself, what? Rather, train yourself to be godly. For physical training is of some value, but godliness holds value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. He's saying that's the right change. What's he doing? He compares physical training with spiritual training. If you're going to the gym, you're getting some physical training, you're making a change there, and I want to commend that and say, go for it. You should do that. I recommend that. That's good change, but it's not the best change. The right change, he says, is spiritual training, is spiritual transformation. And that's what we want to graft into you and graft into what you do in this year through this material, is graft in spiritual change. Why? Because it's the right change. And is it lasting? Galatians 6, verse 10 says, let us not become weary. Right? Whenever you're trying to make a change, it's easy. The diet, you become weary of the diet. Your finances, you become weary in finances. Whatever it is, it's so very easy to become weary when trying to make a change, and so it doesn't last. And oh my gosh, it feels so defeating because I tried, but it didn't last. You need right change. You need lasting change. And he says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time. My gosh, he says, you're going to reap a harvest if you just don't give up. Don't give up. So one of the things about the series and joining a small group and picking up the book, I've written the book in kind of a way to help you engage with God, spiritual training, every day. There's 5 devotions. You read one every day. They're short. They're easy. They're this contrast of the American Revolution and the Jesus. And you start thinking about concepts about being a revolutionary. You think about that. There's little reflection questions you can kind of answer. But every day, and then meeting with a small group to kind of process that, what that does is it stimulates your growth. It stimulates your growth. And over a span of 10 weeks, it's going to give you kind of the consistency that creates a new habit. You've heard that, right? That it takes 21 days consistently of doing something to create a new habit, and then another 21 days if you really want to entrench that habit. Well, this is well more than 42 days. And so if you say, I'll do this, what it has the power to do is help you reorient yourself to become someone who sees yourself differently as a revolutionary. Now, the second thing in our notes I want to talk about, and we're going to kind of zip through this hopefully kind of quickly, is what does it take then to have right and lasting change? What would that look like? What would that take? Aristotle had this theory, he was several hundred years before Christ, had this theory about bringing clarity to something. And if you had clarity on something, you could move that forward well. And isn't that true? I mean, right? We need clarity. It's one of the most powerful things in life is to get clear about stuff. And a lot of times, simply the reason why our change doesn't work is there's no clarity to it. We don't know, why we're doing it. We don't know when we're doing it. We don't know what it is exactly. And so if you don't have clarity, well, there's much less likely chance it's going to happen. And so Aristotle said you need clarity. And so that's where the whole idea of what, where, when, why, and how came from. The five whats, the 5 W's and how. That's where that kind of came from, was this idea that you need these things to build that. So that's what I'm just going to offer up today. Kind of a little overview of John, the Gospel of John, looking at who, what, where, when, and how, and why. And so the first one is who. And I just want to say, you've got to ask yourself, if you want change, you either need to know or you need to change who you follow. Number one, who you follow. You need to know that, or you need to change who you follow. That means there needs some evaluation about who am I following. I'm not talking about Facebook, right? I know you got lots of people following you, and people you're following them, and you're tweeting this and tweeting that. I'm not talking about that, social media. I'm talking about who are you kind of looking at as a model, as a person to kind of emulate in life. I remember being a teenager, and I had this shirt. It was kind of like this shirt. It represented something that I believed in, and something that I had identity in, and it had a motorcycle on it. It was a dirt bike, and it's flying through the air. And the little slogan. I'm just being honest here. I'm not trying to cross any lines or anything. The slogan just said, "Do it in the dirt." And I was probably about 14, and I remember when my idol was this guy that's about 3 years older than me, 4 years older than me, and he was an excellent motocross rider, and I just wanted to be like him. And so I wanted to, if I could keep up with him on the track, I was like, I was all that, right? And so I was just on his tail, eating his dirt, but Jesus, because I wanted to be like him, and so I dressed like him, and I talked like him, and I wanted a helmet like him, and all that. And I remember him saying, do you know what that even means? I said, do it in the dirt. It means ride your bike. Well, it means a little more than that, but anyhow, I was just kind of ignorant, right? I was ignorant, but what I wanted to be like someone that I admired, I esteemed, right? There's kids all around us that are kind of ignorant to a certain part of life and all the nuances of it, but they're just looking to find somebody they want to be like. But what happens is, as we move into adulthood and we find ourselves kind of doing that too, that some people drive certain vehicles and they live in certain neighborhoods, and we want to be like them, and so we just find ways to try to be like them. We have a whole culture that's built around trying to put fashion and statements out there that would attract people, and they'd say, I want to be like that, and so we buy and we purchase and we emulate because we want to be like someone. That's kind of maybe who you follow. But following's got to go a bit deeper than that for it to be revolutionary. God wants to shake up your perception and your understanding and your awareness of who you follow. And so Jesus, when Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, circle the word whoever follows, circle the word follows me, will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. He was being revolutionary. soon as he said that, the hearers of that statement would have automatically understood, because it was a Jewish audience that primarily that John was writing to, and the Jews, above all people, would have understood Genesis 1. Chapter 1 of Genesis is all about God creating, and there was this light in Genesis, and the light was there before the sun was created. And that light was God. And every Jewish boy understood that. And so Jesus, when he spoke to the Jewish audience and heard him say this, they would have all been like, what are you saying? What kind of declaration is that? Well, it's a declaration of deity. It's a statement that I'm not like everybody else. I'm apart and different from everybody else. I've come to be like you, but I've come to be more than you to help you become like me. You see, God became like us so we could become like him. And Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, and whoever follows that light has this ability you can leave darkness behind, and you can step in and have the light of life. And about 58 times the word follow me is used in the New Testament, and it had to do with all kinds of people, crowds and leaders and disciples followed Jesus. They followed Jesus. I mean, it's all over, right? The gospel, people are following Jesus all over. But there was a difference from following Jesus and being called to follow Jesus. See, a lot of people followed Jesus, and as soon as they didn't get what they wanted, they didn't get more food, or they didn't see somebody get healed, they didn't get what they wanted, they stopped following, right? If you ever had somebody unfriend you on Facebook, it's, oh, such a sad day, right? It's kind of like Jesus. They unfriended him as soon as they didn't get what they wanted from him. And so, but when Jesus called someone to follow him, he was calling them to enlist in something absolutely life transformational. And that call is true still today. He wants to call you, come follow me. It's what he did in Mark chapter 4, verse 19. A group of fishermen, a lot of the disciples were just these guys that were just had an identity and a life of being fishermen. That's all they did. That's all they knew. That if you ask them, who are you? I'm Peter. I'm a fisherman, right? That's what I do, right? And that's what we do. We kind of think of who we are as by what we do. And that's exactly what they did. And Jesus says, come follow me and I will make you what? Fishers of men. And then they left their nets and they followed him. You see, the little point there is in that little bullet is that when you change who you follow, it has the power to change who you are. When you change who you follow, it has the power to change who you are. And that's what revolutionaries do. They start saying, I need to do that. You think about the American Revolution, and one of the things that makes the American Revolution so amazing was this guy that we call, the father of our country. Who was that? George Washington, right? Yeah. And did he really never tell a lie? No, that's a lie. He was a liar. He was a liar. He told lies. But he was also an amazing man. Incredible man. His life story is just absolutely phenomenal. There's a book written by James Fleckner, and it's one of the books that I researched in kind of the book and doing the thing. And it's called The Indispensable Man. And the argument that he makes in that book is that without George Washington, we probably would not have an America. Without George Washington, there probably would not have been a successful revolution. That literally the American Revolution was on the brink of failure almost every year of the American Revolution from 1775 to 1783. Until the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783. I mean, it was on the brink of failure almost nonstop. But there was this indispensable man that kept the vision before the people, that kept people marching to the beat of the same drum. The people that said, we will declare that we are independent from England and we are not going to live under tyranny anymore. The indispensable man. And as I read it, it's absolutely true. He lost more battles than he won, but he won the right ones. And he was an amazing tactician. And he was an amazing leader that allowed other leaders to have voice into his decisions. He was the indispensable man. And you see, in the Jesus Revolution, what we understand about Jesus is the ultimate indispensable man. He's the ultimacy of that. And when we embrace him, what we do is we say, I'm declaring who I follow. And so in this, our introduction to the introduction to the introduction, I just want to invite you with me to declare, who are you following? You need to declare it. You need to change it. Some of us here we're like C.S. Lewis's quote, we are going in the wrong direction, we're in the wrong road, and change for you in this season is going to need to be about 180-degree change. You need to go a completely different way because I know it, well, I don't know it, but I know you know it, right? If it's true of you, you know it. You know that you're going the wrong way, you're on the wrong road. This is the time to do it. For others of you, you're going in generally the right direction. You're doing relatively well. You might just be off a couple degrees. That's better than going in the wrong direction, right? But if you're off a couple degrees, what happens as you continue to be off a couple degrees? You see, a lot of great Americans are off just a couple degrees. And what we end up is far, far, far away from the faith that once stimulated us and stirred us and we were passionate about. And so maybe all you've been off is just a little bit, but you find yourself way out of kilter, way off base, out of sync with Jesus. It's time to change. It's time to change. Maybe it's a few degrees, maybe it's an about face, but it's time to change. And it means you change your declaration about who you follow. The second thing is, not only is it's the what part, it's what we believe. We have to recognize that God wants to change not only who we follow, but what we believe. And it's so critical for us to grasp that when we believe truth, and that's what Jesus said, he says, I am the truth. We understand that. There's something powerful about that because that's what we all want. We want the truth. Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. I think you can. I think you can handle the truth. And whenever we accept the truth and know the truth has the power to change our lives. The Gospel of John, the theme verse, or the kind of the key verse in the Gospel of John is chapter 20, verse 31, which says, and these things are written so that you may believe, circle that word, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by, circle again, believing you might have what? Life in His name. That's the key verse for the Gospel of John because that little verse says, why the entire book was written. It was written that we might change what we believe about Jesus. That's what the Jesus Revolution does. It changes who we follow and it changes what we believe. In John chapter 8, verse 31, it says that to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples. Then you will know the truth. And the truth will set you free. You see, there's something about holding to a teaching, not just ascribing to a teaching. Not just saying you heard a teaching, I heard the podcast about Jesus. Right? It's not just hearing something about Jesus, it's holding to who Jesus is and what he has said and what he's asked us to do. And when we do that, when we hold to that, it has the potency and power to change who we are and creates freedom. The Declaration of Independence starts out. You know how it starts out? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I mean, it starts out with this proclamation of this is what we believe. And our nation is built on that. The Declaration of Independence and the subsequent Constitution. And those statements are amazing. They're these anchoring statements about truth that our forefathers, our fathers of our nation said, these things are fundamental and you got to believe them to be a part of this revolution. To be free, to be liberated. And Jesus wants us to know that he wants us to be free and liberated in a spiritual way that radically changes everything we do. And I think this is a great time to step up and anchor ourselves a little bit deeper in our spiritual beliefs, don't you? Because in our culture, I mean, we've got to begin to kind of separate what is nationalism from patriotism, because nationalism goes astray because it says we are elitist and we are better than other people, and it kind of contaminates the very premise of what Jesus came to establish. We've got to be able to separate. I'm not a nationalist, I'm a patriot. I'm a patriot. And to understand patriotism is to understand the love of country. And Jesus was a person, he was a Jew, and he loved the Jewish people, and he loved the Jewish nation. But guess what? Jesus wasn't a nationalist. He didn't love them at the expense of the rest of the world. He loved them in conjunction with the rest of the world. You see, what Jesus wants us to understand is we need to let our faith affect our politics and stop letting our politics influence our faith. We've got to do that. We've got to be people that say, I want to anchor what I believe in the words of Christ. To understand that guides my principles on how I treat others. And when that starts happening to a people, all of a sudden they rise above political rhetoric. They rise above political controversy, and they can speak into any life that's before them with a loving sense of compassion that moves the person on the other side of the conversation. Not to a political ideology, but to the Savior of the world that wants to radically change their lives. That's the kind of revolution Jesus wants us to be a part of. And it starts when we are affected by what we believe. That word believe is used 139 times in the New Testament. The word faith 254 times. Similar concepts. Literally, the New Testament tells us we've got to change what we believe. And in this series, you can change and you can alter and you can tweak, or you can do a 180 and say, oh my gosh, I want to understand more deeply what I believe. Not only are we supposed to be affected by who we follow, but what we believe, and not only that, but also where we are and where we're going. The third thing, number 3, well, where are we and where are we going? Where we got to ask that question. Why? Because we want clarity. Change falters. The greater the fog, the greater the faltering. The greater the clarity, the greater the continuity and the movement forward in your change. And so to say, okay, this is who I'm following and this is what I believe and where am I and where am I going? And I think about Jesus and his desire to help us to find a place where we could move forward. And he says, I am I think it's John 10. Jesus says, I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. And this means he will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. What kind of life? A full life. I don't know. You want a full life? Is your life to the full? I mean, well, you know, in America, we want a full life, but we usually find ourselves running on empty. We want fullness, and we grasp for things we think will make us full, and yet we feel empty so much of the time. Why? Because we bought into the wrong ideology. We've brought into a belief system that more things will make me happy, or being more busier will make me happy, and none of those things really satisfy my heart, and they won't satisfy yours. We need a revolution in what we believe, and a revolution in understanding where we are and where we want to go. We want to go to a full life. How are you getting there? It's a great goal. How do you get a full life? Well, it's not by just following the Joneses. It's not by just copying the person down the street. It's not by driving what they drive or wearing what they wear or talking like they talk. It's a change of your heart on the inside where you know who you follow and you know what you believe and you know where you are and you therefore know where you're going. That idea that Jesus says, I'm the gate. He's saying, literally, I'm the one that will let you enter into a place of security. That's what you're not a sheep, so you may not know this, but sheep like pasture. Yeah, they like some place where there's what they need. That's what pasture represented for a sheep. What I need. Jesus says, I am what you need. If you want to experience what you really need, you got to come through me. And then there's this flexibility and movement of in and out, and you're present with him and you're experiencing him and you get what you need. But there's an adversary, there's a component, there's a tyrant. There's a tyrant that is a thief. King George was a thief. He just wanted to use the colonies to pay the bills that he couldn't pay. And that was the whole premise of why the revolution started, was because they were done living under tyranny. And living under tyranny is living under any oppressive power. If there's a power that's oppressing you and creating and doing things in you that's not right, not healthy, and your unalienable rights are those things that don't change. And if someone's violating things about that, then you're living in tyranny. And so he wanted to call them, we don't have to live in tyranny. We don't have to let slavery define us. And Jesus wants to set you free. And so it's so interesting that the biblical language is so similar, because he wants us to be people that have been freed by the life of the Spirit that comes inside of us and renews us and gives us new sight, new insight. Where are you and where are you going? And you might be saying, my gosh, I'm in bondage. I'm in tyranny. My finances are in tyranny. I've blown the budget and this power of debt is just weighing on me and I don't know what to do. Well, the revolution can help you change that. You might be living with an addictive behavior that you're saying, my gosh, I'm under this tyranny of addiction. I drink and I can't stop drinking, or food is just like, it just rules my life. It's all I think about, or a medication that you're on, or anger that keeps exploding, and you're like, I'm under this tyranny of this behavior that's killing me. It's killing the people around me. It's destroying. It's causing me to be a tyrant. And God says, there's liberty for you. There's change that he wants to move you into and move you through. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I mean, if anybody says they're the way, I want to follow them. And especially if somebody says, I'm the way, and he died and predicted his death and predicted his resurrection, and he did it, I want to follow the guy that rose from the dead. That's who I want to follow. And especially if he said, I'm the way, well, then I'm going to follow you. Well, where are we going? You're going to a life that can be full. A life filled with the light of life and full. That's the life I want. When Jesus said that, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one can come. He's talking about going somewhere. No one can get, right? No one can come. No one can get where you need to go. You need to get to the Father. Well, no one can get to the Father if you're not getting to the Father through the Son. See, he tells us wherever you are, recognize where you need to go is to go with God, go with Jesus, to be in the arms of the Father, to recognize He's got your present, He's got your future, He's got it all planned out, mapped out. He wants you to enjoy eternity with Him. Jeffrey talked, was moved by the loss of Bryce, his daughter's sweet friend, and the loss of Mark, a fellow that we all loved. Many of us loved around here, and his family's a part of our church body. And I've got 4 funerals this week, and got a text today. 2 more people just died last night, and I said that about January. I mean, it's crazy. People are dying, but you're called to live right now. And maybe you're called to live like you were dying. Live like you knew if I were dying, how would I live? Well, you are dying. Newsflash, none of us get out of this alive. We're all going to die. But how are you going to live until you die? That's the question, right? But how am I going to live until I die? And do I want to live in such a way that my life has a wake? It has an impact. There's some effect to how I've chosen to live. And Jesus says, I can affect the way you live, so when you die, you know that how you lived affected eternity. That's the way I want to live. That's where I'm going. This is where I am, and that's where I'm going. Where are you, and where are you going? You see, a revolution affects who we follow, it affects what we believe, it affects where we are and where we're going, and it affects the next one, number 5, is it affects, kind of the how and why, or how and when and how will I get there? When and how will I get there? Those are important things. When you recognize that you need to do some different things, and the when is now, and the when is constant, we understand what Jesus meant. And this is kind of our theme verse. This is on the shirt somewhere. I don't know where it is. It's on the shirt somewhere. It's on the back, maybe. I don't know. John 15:5. Right there in your notes. Is it there? John 15:5. Look at let's say this one together. Ready, set, go. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do, how much can you do? Nothing. I know some of you bristle at that. Well, I can do something. Jesus is saying, yeah, you can do a lot to screw things up. But I'm talking fruit for eternity. That's what I'm talking about. He's saying, if you want fruit for eternity, you're going to need me. So one of the big things we'll do different in this series that's different from the American Revolution, it's almost antithetical. It's almost, it's the polar opposite. The American Revolution was a declaration of independence. The Jesus Revolution is a declaration of dependence. That's what we want to graft into our hearts. And so that's the reason that little verse is going to be kind of our theme verse, is it? If you remain in me and I remain in you, you're going to be someone that starts to bear real fruit, and fruit that will last forever. And apart from me, your fruit's just going to wither and die. It's going to be forgotten as soon as it's past. And I guarantee you, I want what I do to not last for a little while. I want it to last a long time. And I bet you do too. We can be revolutionaries. The last one is simply just kind of this why following. And it's interesting because in the American Revolution, there was horrific abandonment. There were less people in America that participated. There were more people that resisted participation in the revolution than participated in the revolution. While there were revolutionaries, there were these people called loyalists, and loyalists were committed to England. And so we'll talk about a lot of that as we kind of go through our series. But it started, they think the Declaration of Independence was just kind of the marker, was the line in the sand. It was the articulation of what they wanted to accomplish. But the revolution actually started, in April of 1775. And as the Battle of Trenton took place, it was just amazing because the British thought, we're just going to wipe up on the colonies and it's going to be nothing, we're going to take care of them in a flash. But there was this movement, right, that we can't do that. We got to create little unity. And so all across the colonies, in fact, there were gatherings that kind of said, would you commit to be a part of the militia? And the militia were like these Minutemen. And the idea of a Minuteman was they were ready in a minute. What were they ready for? They were ready for anything that would threaten their safety or their community. They were ready in a minute. They were Minutemen. Great concept, right? In fact, the colony's original idea was we don't ever want a military. We don't ever want a military. We don't have to invest in that, give our time to that. We just want to be people that are ready to step up if needed. And so that was wonderful on one hand, but it was, Washington said it's terrible on the other hand because that won't sustain things. And so, but they were ready to do that. And the Minutemen gathered together and they had amazing. It wasn't a victory, but it looked like a victory because England in the battle, up Breed's Hill and in that first attack, they lost like 1,000 men. The British did, and the Americans lost like 400. And so British, kind of went running back to King George, their tail between their legs, saying, "Dang, they can really fight. They're kind of serious about this whole deal." But then before a year was even out, it looked like the whole thing was going to be up. I mean, Washington, he gets an amazing battle in Ticonderoga up north around Canada, and they bring back 300 cannons. They put it on Dorchester Heights, and they defend New York. But he gets beat out of New York, and literally he's on the run. He crosses the Delaware, literally in a deep fog had not just settled in, almost a miraculous fog. If that fog had not set in on that December night, the war would have ended there. I mean, literally their forces were rallied, they were all together, and they literally would have been defeated in that night had a fog not set in and made it possible for Washington and all of his men to cross the Delaware. And they were just on the run because they were almost completely annihilated by the British. And if Howe at that point hadn't held back, had he approached more, he would have completely taken over and consumed them all. Divine providence, and much of the Declaration of Independence attributes divine providence, things God did on our behalf to kind of move. And then on Christmas Day, Washington assembles his men, and on Christmas night, through the night, they crossed the Delaware again. And they knew that a Hessian group of soldiers, and the Hessians were trained military from Germany, from Hessen Castle in Germany. And these men were trained from the age of 14 years of age. Some of them in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s now fighting. They'd fought all around the world for hire. And now these trained militia who were just mopping up on the colonials. And Washington crosses the Delaware, and he comes into Trenton. This is the second battle of Trenton in less than a year. And the Hessian troops were all asleep after maybe a Christmas hangover. And he launches an attack through there, and he kills about 40 Hessian soldiers and takes 900 captive. And so there's this amazing point of victory, and it's just crescendo of maybe there's hope. But all he has is militia. And everybody's kind of like, we're done. That was good. We're going back to the farm. Abandon ship. And he gives us this invigorating speech. And Washington wasn't the most eloquent of all leaders. He was an amazing leader. Speech was not necessarily his highest point. But he mustered the courage, and he called forth from them to say, my fellow countrymen, you've given me everything you possibly could give. And I recognize that you are literally fatigued and exhausted with what you've expended so far, and all you want to do is go home. But if you go home, everything we envision, everything we hope for, country and wives and possessions and homes, everything is going to be tyrannized by the king if you don't stay the course. And literally the men, kind of one by one and two by two and three by three, they would converse for a little bit, and guys would say, I'll stay. General Washington, I'll stay. Why would they stand over again? Hand went up, and they stepped up, and they re-enlisted, and they said, we'll stay the course. Why? Because someone cast a vision of a future without tyranny, a future without slavery, a future without bondage. They said, that's what we want. We will step up. And Jesus wants to call you to step up, because there's a world of tyranny. For some of us, it's not our finances, and it's not our addictive behavior, but it is our sin nature, because we know the power of sin is alive and well inside of us, because it creates apathy where there should be passion. It creates disengagement where we should be engaged. It creates abdicating responsibility instead of taking responsibility. And you know, sometimes you're under tyranny of your own sin nature, and God says, I want to liberate you and free you from that. Amen. And I can if you simply follow me. You know, when John 6:66, it says that, you know, many of the followers of Jesus had turned back and turned away. From that time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. And Jesus just says, do you not want to leave too? Do you? He asked the 12. And then Peter kind of pipes up and says, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the very words of eternal life. You see, the disciples were in that same boat. They'd seen amazing things, but a lot of them were just saying, we're done. We're going back home. We're finished. And Jesus, well, are you going to quit too? I want to ask you, are you going to quit? Are you going to quit now? Or you say, my gosh, why would I quit now? Now is the prime time. Now is the best time. The best time saying, I want to be a revolutionary. I want to go forward and not only experience change, but instigate change in my kids and my grandkids. I want to instigate change with my brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors and coworkers and associates. I want to be someone who experiences the change of God so much so that it can't help but overflow, so others begin to experience that change as well. All you've got to do is be ready to instigate a conversation. One last story and we're done. What I've tried to do in the book is just create content that when someone's exposed to the content, it begs an answer, begs a response. We had some family that were staying with us over the holidays, and I got the greatest Christmas present ever. These family members that were staying with us, they came to church on the 23rd, and I was actually I had a cold, but I pushed through on that day, and the message was Christmas realizations, and this family member was a part of the service, and they were spent the weekend with us, and on Christmas morning we were both up early, and we were just sitting in the living room, and I just said, what did you think about Christmas service on the 23rd? And they started to share a little bit what they thought about that. And I just said, tell me about your level of commitment to Jesus. Have you ever done that? Have you ever said yes to him? And they said, no, never done that. And I said, really? Wow. I called their spouse in, and I said, they've never done that. They go, wow, you've never done that? I've never done that. So you want to do that? They said, yeah. Before I knew it, we were on our knees together holding hands.